Good evening. Welcome to Community Spotlight by Goffstown Forward. I am one of your hosts, Cindy Grigorakakis, and this evening we are interviewing Melanie Renfrew Hebert, who is running for re-election to the Goffstown Budget Committee. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for having this space for us to make videos so we can share them out with the community.
Thank you so much.
It's valuable.
Yeah, I think it's important information just so we can give voters a chance to learn more about the candidates that are running. And I'm excited to chat with you this evening because I think the last time we chatted, we talked about the Budget Committee as a whole and what the roles and responsibilities of that committee is. And now we get to talk about you.
Fantastic. Well, to talk about Goffstown and our budget and how I think I can help.
Absolutely. So to start off, how long have you lived in Goffstown and what brought you to town?
So my wife and I moved here about 10 years ago with our very young son. We moved from Manchester, and we'd lived in Manchester for a really long time. And so we were looking for a place that had kind of a slower pace, somewhere that definitely had good schools, and somewhere where there was a good community. And I think we hit the nail right on the head with Goffstown. Our kids are now 7 and 12 years old, and they go to the public schools, and they set the pace for us now, running them around the community to their activities. So this is their home. This is the only home that they've ever known, and this is their community, and we're very grateful to be here.
So why are you running for re-election? And if you can let folks know, if they don't know, how many terms have you been on the Budget Committee? Have you served?
Well, I've only served one term on the Budget Committee.
Okay.
And that term is 3 years. And it feels much longer because we break a little bit during the summer. Mm-hmm. So it feels like you're coming back fresh every time. The reason that I'm looking to be reelected for the Budget Committee is because there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think that continuity is important. I think that individuals, I know at least for myself, there was a ramp up in the first year as you learned the flow of the process, and as you learned to work with so many other people with differing opinions, different backgrounds, and different skills. So the first year, definitely the bumpiest for me, but I settled in, and eventually I was chair of the Budget Committee for a brief period of time in between two other chairs.
Great.
Which was great.
Yeah, I feel like it takes a while, this is just from what I've heard, to settle into the role, to learn more about it, to see how others, and to figure out how the different members work together on the committee as well. So you mentioned skills. So what skills or experience do you bring to the role?
I think if I had to pick the biggest one, it's that I do have a background with numbers. I worked in financial services. I'm not going to say when, but the number didn't start with a 2 in front of it for the year. So I worked in financial services for a while. And I've also worked as an economic and labor market analyst for the state. In between, I teach mathematics. I teach prob and stats. I occasionally teach quant, which people get a little terrified when they hear that.
And my heart just fluttered a little.
It's a very common reaction. Yep. I love numbers, and I love policy. We don't set policy on the Budget Committee, but it helps to have a little bit of an understanding about why the numbers are being put in and the rules and the laws around that.
Where do you teach?
Well, at the moment, I still adjunct for Manchester Community College.
That's great.
I used to work with Hebert as well, and I taught micro and macroeconomics. No heart palpitations, okay? And then right now I don't teach every semester. I'm fortunate in my life to be able to pick and choose the activities that I want to be involved in. And the big focus for me is that they have to be related to community or education.
That's great. So what does the phrase fiscal responsibility mean to you?
Well, first of all, it terrifies me to have to repeat it. It's a very difficult phrase to say. But for me, fiscal responsibility is about balance. It's about making sure that we are providing for what our town needs now and planning and providing for what it needs in the future. And sometimes those seem like diametrically opposed. But there is a balance, and working in such a large group and having the excellent department heads that we have, I don't know if you're familiar, I think we might have talked about it last time,
Yeah.
but we actually get the opportunity to hear from them multiple times as they explain line by line exactly why the money is needed in particular areas. And we visually see it as we go out there. And I think that's really important. I think it's one thing to hear about it, and it's another to actually go and see how it's affecting, say, our infrastructure, or meaning our buildings and our towns, and yes, our pools and things like that. And I think being able to go out there and look at it and have a real understanding of what is going on, how long it's been going on, and what really needs to be done makes a big difference when we come back to the table and sit as a group and we talk about it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I really love about being on such a big committee, is that everybody gets a voice at the table.
That's great. So there's some talk out there that the budget committee needs to work on transparency. So as somebody that has served on the committee, what do you think about that claim? And do you feel like there are any areas in which transparency or availability of the committee could be improved to the public?
It's an interesting question. I'm glad you asked it. I've heard that myself around the community, and it's a little, I don't like to listen to things that aren't based on evidence or have any supporting fact. So it's difficult for me to hear that one. If I can go over a little, I know some people didn't hear about the budget process, and I did mention that we do go line by line, and we do have every department head available to us and all of the budgets themselves. And all of our meetings are recorded. All of their meetings are recorded before they ever come to us. Someone saying that it's not transparent really gives me a little bit of a panic, because if they're saying that out in the community and individuals are hearing that, they could be disenfranchising voters, which to me is one of the cardinal sins. Everybody should have the opportunity to vote, but more importantly, they should be motivated to vote and not disenfranchised from it. So I think if there's anyone who's saying that, they either should provide instances so that we can all look at it and be assured that it's actually not happening. But they should be careful, because people listen to people in positions of power, such as the Budget Committee.
That's great. Great answer. So give us an example of a difficult decision you've made within your time on the Budget Committee that would give an idea to voters in Goffstown about some insight about how you problem solve.
Okay. I like the question, because it gives me an opportunity to say, every vote that we take, I weigh it by not only the cost to taxpayers, which is really important to me, but also the cost to our future community, and also to some of the populations in our community that may not have access to other resources. So for me, it has to fit our whole community. It has to work in this time, and it has to continue working later. We don't want to pass or vote for things that aren't going to be sustainable in the future.
Yeah.
And we also don't want to vote to eliminate things that will be important to people now and in the future.
Great. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges Goffstown is facing right now?
Well, I think right now one of the biggest challenges is our infrastructure. We have some incredible buildings, and I say that as someone who came in not having lived here my entire life, so I didn't have that connection to them. But we have some incredible buildings and spaces available to us that are really not only assets, but resources for our whole community. But by slowly whittling away at the tax rate, we lose opportunities to provide upgrades and maintenance over time that eventually will lead to larger bills to repair them. I'll use an example of the library because everyone knows it's a historical building and it needs to be maintained in a certain fashion. That's just one example of something that should be planned for and maintained in a proper manner. Yeah. But there are lots of these wonderful resources around town that could use that same care and attention. Town Hall is another one where they do the absolute best they can to keep everybody in the building in a great working environment. But it gets harder and harder as time goes by, and those spaces need to be renovated in order to work. The police station is another that was never built to handle the equipment and number of people that we need in our really growing community. And we will have to make a decision on that and find a way to make sure that we still have those spaces for our police department to do their fantastic work.
That's great. Why should residents vote for Melanie for the Budget Committee?
I think the number one reason is I have experience. I've gone through our budget cycle multiple times, as I said briefly, as the chair of the Budget Committee. But more than that, I'm motivated. I really care about Goffstown. I never thought coming in as a new resident that was going to be the case. I thought a space is a space. But this community is special. We may have some, back and forth about different things, but when we sit at that table, every voice counts, and every voice is representing people in Goffstown.
That's great. Anything else you would like the community to know about you?
Well, I think I might have mentioned that I love the community.
Yep.
So I don't work a traditional job, and we did that on purpose, my wife and I, so one of us would be home with the children. And for me, that meant if I was going to be here with the children during the day, that I was also going to need to support our community. So I make it a practice to go out and find ways where I can help in any small way in the community. The kids' food program, weekend food bag program, the community clothing closet, which I may have to admit is more about socializing with the wonderful people who work there. Yeah. And maybe picking out a few things off the racks to bring home to my kids. Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm also a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate. And so I don't only give my time to the town, but I also give it to kids across the state who need someone to look out for their best interests.
That's awesome. So you're living a life of service.
Definitely.
Well, we're lucky to have you as part of this community. This concludes another Community Spotlight by Goffstown Forward. As a reminder, please come out and vote on March 12th in our municipal election. And tune in next time for our next interview. Thank you so much. Good night.